Left the big city for the simple country life. Found myself a woman that it took for me to be my wife. I was working on the ground, coming sun up to sundown. Hey, I'm trying to make a reputation for a man inside this town. Hard as I try, maybe I just can't. I ain't no up and kind of leaving name. She kissed me one time and she took my heart. Baby, you can love me, you can leave me. I'm a honky-tonk star. Yeah, I'm a honky-tonk star. Well, working 3 jobs, living out of a car. Mama never told me life would get this hard. Running around the world playing my guitar. Baby, you can love me, you can leave me. I'm a honky-tonk star. Yeah, I'm a honky-tonk star. I'm a honky-tonk star. Lord, I'm a honky-tonk star. Playing my guitar. Baby, you can love me, you can leave me. I'm a honky-tonk star. Yeah, a honky-tonk star. Yeah, I'm a honky-tonk star.
All right, we are live. It's been a while. I'm a little rusty. There's a lot going on. We've added some new things into the mix. Maybe you saw the crane shot we had going on there during the intro. I've been working on all the graphics for the stream this week, trying to get everything ready. So it's a little stressful just trying to get the stream going, seeing how it's been so long since we've had one. But we're trying to get more regular with them, fire these things back up. And so when I saw the topic of today's stream, I was like, we're gonna have to fire up a live stream for this one. Community is one of those terms that's thrown around a lot, especially with e-commerce platforms. Used to be really open source platforms in general, but now pretty much every business understands that it needs to build some sort of community. And I don't know, especially for us developers, if there's anyone that is more synonymous with Magento's community than Ben Marks. And so, it's one of those things where you just get accustomed to how things are. Certain people get just associated with certain items. Like, you think of a bottle of whiskey, you might think of me. And if you think of Ben Marks, well, Magento has to come to mind. And so when he announced that he's going to be leaving Magento for Shopware, took a lot of us by surprise. And so, a lot of concerns in the community as to what this means for the future. Is this a sign of the times? Is, this a canary in the coal mine of what's to come? Or is Ben just ready for a change? So let's get Ben on and let's ask him. So Ben, if you would, now obviously, I'm assuming most people out there know who you are, but maybe there's some that don't. So if you would, tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Where to start? These days I'm calling out abuses of power when I see platforms doing it. So my background, I was a Magento developer, and through a series of happy accidents and a lot of good fortune in my life, made it to a position where I was able to join Magento and was kind of a figurehead of the community capacity, and was able to, I think, give back a lot to the Magento ecosystem. Hopefully I did a good job anyway of making sure that their needs, their their experiences were being heard and accounted for, in what were then the big orange towers, now the big red towers. And I, over time, came to appreciate just the whole of e-commerce as an industry, and have come to believe that, it's where each platform probably has its ecosystem around it. I think it's really the broader mix of all platforms together that have this industry that we have this imperative to look after and to do, to conduct ourselves professionally and with empathy for the benefit of the merchants at whose pleasure we serve. How's that?
I think that was pretty good. I just little
Nice
wardrobe change here. It's the only Magento hat that I actually have. So
I don't have a Shopware hat yet. They sent me shirts, but they, there was no accounting for the, I'm basically responsible for market expansion at Shopware, but so far during COVID, I managed to only expand my waistline just a little bit. So hopefully someday I'll be able to fit in my Shopware shirts.
So let's talk about that, a little bit, your new role at Shopware, and then we'll kind of get into why.
Let's talk about Blanton's. Let's talk about Blanton's Gold.
Well, this was actually sent to me by Shopware, so I figured it was fitting for this particular live stream. Matter of fact, this is what we're gonna have to do. We're just gonna have to go ahead and swap it out.
I don't even have a hat.
Probably not adjusted for my melon here. But if you're going to send me Blanton's Gold, I'm going to have to keep going bigger with the hat. In Europe, their heads are smaller, apparently. So if you're going to send me Blanton's Gold, you get a live stream and I'll wear your hat.
Yeah.
I might need a little, I'm a little old school for the straight bill.
But you're drinking out of that Magento Rocks glass. I like this. This is actually we have a good visual representation here, right? So you have these community friends that are trying to make sure that this business is a good business. You have Magento adjacent to Shopware, and this is how it is because every platform has something to offer, and I think it's all about making sure, in fact, that merchants, agencies, basically everyone can find their way and knows their place in an ecosystem or not in an ecosystem. I was just talking with our COO, Vinny, earlier today, and just saying, look, one of the things that I think is essential, like one of the things I would look for as a merchant evaluating an agency or platform, like if I walk in and an agency says this is a platform for you, I would immediately say, well, how often do you recommend against this platform? Right? Like how much, because there is no one platform for everybody. I really wish that this were more of just the standard way of thinking in the business. How is that Blanton's Gold?
It's fantastic. I'm assuming I sent you a bottle of Blanton's. Have you drank the bottle of Blanton's yet? There
is exactly one portion remaining in that. Fortunately, then my friends over at a well-known shipping company in the space were kind enough to send me another bottle. But I'm actually going to try and leave that one closed. I have a little bit of Noah's. I'm sure you've had Noah's before.
Noah's Meal?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic bourbon made by
Spicy.
Willie. This one, what I like about Blanton's Gold is it's very similar to Blanton's. It's a little sweeter and it's a little higher proof, which is, you just get a little more of the flavor profile than you do with Blanton's.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit early, so I may not join you. That's actually earlier where you are, but I may not join you with this, but I figured I'd at least have this poured in spirit because there's a neighborhood happy hour later tonight, and I definitely will have some of that.
Well, the great thing is I don't have anybody that, can say anything to me if I just get drunk in the middle of the day. I try not to, but there are no consequences or anything, at least not, work consequences.
I was like, are you sure you don't have anybody who
probably, I mean, my wife might have a few things to say about it. I do need to go do some painting over at the project house this evening. So that'll get mighty sloppy if I drink a little too much.
You and your projects. Well, let's dive in. I think you had probably at least one opening question to ask me about.
Yeah, well, the new role. What is your new role there at Shopware? Like, what are you doing day to day?
It's a good question, TJ. But Actually, I think I'd back up a little bit to the intro. It's probably, sort of, I mean, what actually happened was I, you know, over the years of doing what I do, I think I got to a point where I realized I felt I'd given back, maybe enough, at least quite a lot to the Magento world, and then started looking around and saying, well, what might I be interested in doing, and you know, where am I today, and where do I want to be tomorrow? And the more and more I started thinking about it, the more and more I realized, that it would my next my next step, my next iteration was going to be probably outside of the Magento world, which is really nothing to say about Magento, but much more to say about like where I was and where I wanted to go. And then just through some mutual friends, of course, I run into the Shopware team over the years, and there are a lot of people in the Magento space who have built build solutions on Magento or Shopware, depending on the merchant needs. And so I started having some conversations with leadership there, and it became immediately apparent that that there was an amazing cultural fit, and that the vision that they have in scenic, quaint Schöppingen, Germany, is one that just like spoke to my soul, right? I mean, there's a lot of positives there for me. It's bootstrap company, a couple of brothers just kind of built it up, pure innovation play. But they've grown it to quite some size. I mean, I think when I came on board, it was like 250 people, and there's already, I think, maybe a couple dozen more there now. So growing fast this year. But for me, I think the thing that I like the most is there's no competing strategic interest, right? We're able to, because we're bootstrapped, because we're not trying to build some big exit, we actually can just do the business we want to do, and that's just make stuff that matters for the agencies and the merchants out there in the world. And that's what got me in the door. Now, as far as the title goes, this is a bit of a stretch for me, because I was always out. My job was just to be out there and to engage. And now I actually have to, engage and also be a little bit strategic about it, and open up new lines of business. But there's a great team around me. There are people already working on this. And so the role that I have, I've actually had, I think maybe like we've tried 4 different titles from the time I first started talking with the Hamann brothers, Stefan and Sebastian. And then even on my contract is a different title than the one I have, but the one I have, I think, makes the most sense. So if you get nothing else out of this stream, people, I would love, if you're especially in a market where Shopware isn't, but you think we could have some fit, have some future, I'm just b.marks@shopware.com. I'd like to have your time and attention, just to help understand, even if it's to understand, maybe not right now, maybe down the road. But that's me. That's what I'm doing. It's where I am.
Load up your questions in the chat. We'll get around to those here shortly. It's we are streaming live on LinkedIn and YouTube. It's a little hard to monitor both of those, but keep them coming in, and I'll kind of circle through and find those questions as we get through this conversation a little more. So obviously, there's a lot of similarities, at least between the idea of what merchants Shopware would service and what Magento would service. So what's Shopware's unique proposition in the marketplace? Like, why is it different?
Well, so that question has many, many layers, like the onion. And I think, so if we start at the outside, it's all about flexibility, right? So you have this, I envision a continuum on which you have flexibility at one end, and you have the benefits of a SaaS at the other end, right? So you have like very, very low risk in terms of TCO, like so maintenance and all this other stuff over here. And what I like about Shopware is it's positioned along this continuum in the middle. So there's a ton of flexibility, right? So you have a platform, you have the e-commerce application and all of its extensibility derived from derived from Symfony. So well-known framework out there. And you have the ability to build exactly the experiences you want. And you have the ability to kind of imagine the next steps of where commerce is going, right? So you have essentially unlimited innovation potential on top of that. But because the framework itself is not, well, minimizes the complexity. So Magento, I think, in order to provide the functionality that it provides, has of course, a lot of flexibility, but there's also this pretty heavy middle layer in there. And where I think Shopware rests is somewhere sort of where, Magento is sort of towards the riskier part. Shopware's a little bit to the side and towards the end of what a SaaS offers in terms of reliability, lower development costs, lower maintenance costs. But this is all, this is not just this static thing, right? Because all of commerce is converging on, like, how can we take the risk out of managing infrastructure? How can we take the risk out of the customization scopes? And so at the one end, I think you have SaaS moving towards becoming more and more flexible. You have the super like open source. You can do whatever you want. That's a good and a bad thing. Like open source apps on the other end. Then you have like the pure API commerce players in there, like whether that's Salesforce or Spryker or whoever, coming up the middle, commerce tools. And then we're all headed to the same destination. And at the same time, sort of how developers are going to think about things, how developers expect to work. 5 years time, a developer, developers are not going to be thinking about what is running. Like, they're not going to be thinking about local development environment. Like that concept is just going to be so antiquated. And it's on every platform to figure out how this works. And we have different, approaches as we kind of move in fits and starts along this timeline, right? So you're seeing a lot of evolution with the front ends. And I love that there are things like Vue Js, which is and Vue Storefront, right? So this came out of Devonta, a great program business in Poland, longtime members of Magento ecosystem. They built this agnostic front end that can run across multiple commerce backends. So you can run your store out of like Magento or Shopware or whatever, and then have Vue Storefront across, in front of the customer. And that, I think, is not a symptom, but an indicator of how things are evolving, right? So like Shopify, you can build these custom experiences in the front end, but then you start to get away from, as you get further and further customized, you start to get away from the benefits of SaaS and like the certainty, the de-risking of TCO and all that. It's really interesting to watch unfold. And I thought I had thought about this space a lot until I really started having to think about it as a business leader. And and I want to be clear, like, no one's got it right. No one's got it solved. I mean, Shopify is out there, their leadership. I mean, their social media accounts trying to be edgy right now, but they got edgy yesterday because, in part, I guess, because Jenny's, did this Jenny's ice cream, former Magento customer, I think, on BigCommerce. They did a collaboration with Dolly Parton, who we all agree is a national treasure. And, and site crashes. And, at the same time, Shopify picks this moment to start, crapping on literally every platform that isn't Shopify. I get the joke. And I get that, and I get they're taking a play out of like, Wendy's and other social media accounts. But, I think far too many merchants have had far too many bad experiences with literally every single platform, right? So if you name a platform, there are merchants who were ill-fitted to be on that platform. They had a bad time with it. I think that's not something we should be joking about as platform vendors. The day we make as a platform, the day a platform becomes the perfect platform for everybody, perfect mix of customization and certainty, and guardrails. Awesome. Start throwing stones, right? But I don't think we're there yet. And anyway, I think I've been on about 14 different trains of thought, but this space is fascinating. We haven't solved it. And the cool thing is, I think commerce, the fact that people want to buy and sell things to each other in so many, like, infinitely variable ways, we will never have this problem solved, right? Commerce is always going to evolve. It's always going to be custom. It's just going to be increasingly better managed, lower TCO, and hopefully better results. That's if all the platforms are doing their part to be better for themselves and be better for the merchants that they're serving.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the topic of this live stream, so we're not going to spend any more time on it. But Shopify has a right to talk trash on social media because they've never grinded to a halt during a drop.
Oh, so, yes, they have. Yes, they have.
Never happened. It has never happened in the history. It happens every time somebody major has a drop.
Yeah.
I gotta have a sarcasm button or something.
I usually catch sarcasm, but that was dead. Yeah. Are you sure you're not British?
I'm pretty good at it.
Deadpan. Damn.
So yes, the platform wars are heating up. I mean, I don't know if I'm taking that as a sign that there's just more competition and they're trying to change up the strategy or what. But obviously Shopware is trying to take Magento market share. So
yeah, well, I don't know that we're trying to take it. I would just say that in conversations that I'm having, right? I mean, I think Magento's business is going to be fine, and Magento is there are my departure as far as Magento's health and future success is honestly not really a blip. I mean, there are so many fantastic people there who are going to make sure that Magento continues to lead in the way that it needs to lead. However, I'm not alone. And I walk a fine line because I try to not talk about Magento too much because, I kind of gave up that right when I stepped aside. But I do, in the context of Shopware and like our plans, I talk to people every day, and I'm not even seeding the conversation with the idea. People are noticing that, like, as time goes on, just the market, the merchant profile that fits the story of Magento in an Adobe digital experience context. I mean, all the adjacent products to Magento in the DX portfolio, almost all of them. I mean, they're really interesting, powerful things, but they're solving problems that only enterprises have. And I at this point, I can't see where those things would fit further down market. So it stands to reason that there's a lot of opportunity that exists today that doesn't need to be taken away. It's just as one platform goes in another direction, that creates an opportunity for everybody. And then you still have that jumping off of the end of life that happened last year for Magento 1. So, tens of thousands of merchants still running Magento 1, so a good chunk of those absolutely should go to Shopify. I mean, no question, because
BigCommerce, they should go to BigCommerce.
Well, yes, I'm sorry, Shopify, BigCommerce, right? I mean, I'm irrespective of the bullshit from yesterday. I'm a bigger fan of BigCommerce. I mean, Jimmy Duvall, Chief Product Officer over there, he actually started the hiring process for me when he was at Magento. So he was the one who kind of got the ball rolling for me to join Magento almost 7 years ago. I think they're a good team. Some old Magento colleagues over there, but I really like their positioning as a product. Like, they really do. They're trying to say, hey, we're giving you a lot of flexibility, but we're also giving you the guardrails. So I really like that. I like that approach because I just like innovation. I want commerce to not be boring. And but if you think about how commerce has evolved, so there are a lot of Magento 1 sites that are live today that if Shopify were where it was, if Shopify were what it is today, but back then, like those stores would have belonged on it. So as people start to churn off that platform, there are a lot of places to go. Now, a lot of those stores, though, they were on Magento, and they're still on. Excuse me, they're still on Magento because they need some key integrations. They need some key differentiation and user experience. They've got all these different requirements that just because multi-tenant platforms have to have strong opinions and certain assumptions about how things are done, and things that are you can do and things you just can't do. That's just part of how they maintain themselves. Well, then these merchants have to go somewhere, and probably for a huge chunk of them, Magento 2 is not the best platform for them. For some of them, it will be, and a lot of them have already made that jump. But where Shopware can come in is kind of, I think, give you that experience of like, okay, I've got this idea, or I think if we've got this opportunity, if we can integrate with this thing over here, but how do we build it? So I think Shopware comes in and becomes that tool and that community in which you can build these things affordably and maintainably, and kind of and know that you're going to be able to move forward. I have more thoughts on that, but anyway, I'm taking over your podcast.
No, this is your live stream. I'm just here to press the buttons. So feel free to go as long as you want on anything. But a minute ago you mentioned, Magento obviously has been moving up market versus what it was with Magento 1. And their entire digital experience portfolio, as you said, is solving problems that only enterprises have. But at the same time, everybody is kind of skating into the same space, right? Like we're all moving toward this headless euphoria or API driven whatever. How does Shopware get into that space, or any platform for that matter, while also allowing it to solve problems that small businesses have?
Well, that's a fantastic question. It's all about what you can accomplish, what you can accomplish, and exactly how if Shopware wants to try and compete head to head with like the merchant who is aspirational and is just seeing if a product works, and I've got this thing that I manufacture in China, and I got good, really good profit margin. And it's a very simple product. Maybe it's one simple thing in 5 different colors, and I don't need any kind of I just need people to be able to buy it, check out, whatever. I don't think that's not Shopware's customer, right? It's not a Shopware merchant, right? Shopware has now. Interesting enough, Shopware does have a cloud offering. So this is a SaaS offering. And it exists because now we think that there are those merchants out there who are aspirational, or they're starting small, whatever the case may be, but they can transition, they can grow with us over time, right? So they could start out on Shopware's cloud offering, and then over time, as they need to have these differentiated experiences or these specific integrations, or do things that the software can't do fundamentally, just out of the box, you move over, and all of a sudden, well, guess what? You still have Shopware there. You can still probably even work with the same agency, but you can start to expand. You can start to build those customizations. Now, I mean, Shopware's cloud offering can be extended with third-party vendors who build apps. And that is a degree of customization, right? So that's, again, not unlike Shopify. But the thinking there is just like we're, capture the interest, capture the attention of the people who we think aspirationally want to grow with us. But then growing with us is still a continuum of going, growing up and up into a bigger and bigger space. And we are, I'm working on solving these needs, or satisfying these needs in more and more worldwide markets. So we're talking about like outside of the DACH region, particularly Germany and the Netherlands, and figuring out what these solutions look like, and what these requirements are as you go into different markets.
So, what are the biggest challenges you face to expand that? Like, if that's your job, that's your main focus, how are we going to do that?
A hell of a lot easier 10 years ago, right? Because Magento, there's still plenty of Magento implementations being sold. I mean, that's what we're hearing from hosting companies, right? But there's, um, it's all about finding the space. It's all about gaining the attention and trust of the agencies, the third-party vendors, and of course the merchants. But like anyone who's been in this business, regardless of the platform, gaining the attention of a merchant is challenging, right? Because they're just trying to run their business. And ironically, if you're a platform and you do a really good job, then mostly the merchant isn't even really going to feel. I think ideally they're not even going to feel the environment in which they're working. They just simply their heads down and they do the thing. Like I think of it as if my e-commerce, if I'm a store operator and my e-commerce platform is doing everything it needs to do, it's like I don't even know what model my monitor is. I don't think about it. It just works, right? But I'm using it every day. That's the degree of just transparency that I want merchants to have with the platform that's right for them. Again, this is not. I'm not claiming that Shopware is doing this for all merchants everywhere, but like that's how your commerce app should feel. And you could also flip that over to the customer space, right? So the merchant's customers should, that the transactional nature of commerce, the engagement, it should all feel genuine and it should all be very transparent. I mean, fundamentally because the customer's connecting with the brand, and they shouldn't have any of the friction points of like, oh, I see, I'm being kind of just, like kind of just ground through and directed, haphazardly through this user journey. Those are the challenges that we have to like get merchants to understand that that's possible with what we do. And that's why it's my strategy to go, just to talk, just to start the conversation, but then really listen at what people need. I can tell you, since I was unprepared for the level of interest from markets literally all over the world that came from the announcement of that I was joining Shopware. It's been amazing. It's been kind of relieving to know that there's this level of interest out there, that there's this much opportunity. And this is coming from hosts. This is coming from agencies. And I think through them, we establish relationships with existing merchants. And then, especially once we have more and more referenceable merchants in specific markets, wherever that is, North America, South America, other regions in Europe, it becomes a lot easier. It becomes a self-reinforcing story. I mean, we become a conversation point. And I'm also using this, I think, a little bit selfishly. I want to have more honest discussions about TCO, right? So that's another challenge. Is there's what's the scientific notation? There's a metric shit ton of cheap capital out there and high valuations that give the entrenched players and even up and comers basically a lot of the advertising oxygen, right? So Shopify, obviously, I mean, my goodness, I wish I had invested in their stock a couple of years ago. So they're sitting on a lot of money, and they can buy a lot of attention. Spryker, VTEX, Commerce Tools, like all of these players all have a lot of money, and they are all trying to enter, especially the North American market. But I think I like a grassroots way of engaging, just spending time with people and being honest with people and showing that you care about the business. And that sometimes, that caring means saying like, oh, wow, this is a great business and it's totally not a fit for what we do. Or, have you considered this aspect? Like, I know you're really excited about this thing that we have. For example, like Shopware is fantastic and has been for a very long time with content management, allowing people to build, tell the stories around their products and really connect the customer through the content to the product. So as a merchant, I might find out about that and go, oh my God, that's amazing. Like, that's exactly what I want. And we'd say, yes, this is a great fit for you. But then you have these needs over here, or we know you just don't have, you don't have the discipline or whatever to tend to your store, like give it the ongoing investment that it needs. Like, so, are you sure you want to do this? Those are the kinds of conversations that I want to have. And I think in order to have them, you have to start, we have to start chipping away at the bullshit that's been built up around TCO. TCO is one of the most fascinating substances. It's like the dark matter of the e-commerce world, because you know what? You can, it just is amazing that every single platform can talk about, can basically claim that they have the best TCO, because there's, it's all a matter of perspective. And I think I would like for us to have a little bit more of an objective framework for looking at TCO. So this is one of the many things I'll be working on strategically. Just, whether or not it grows our business, I think it helps clear up the business of doing business in e-commerce. And maybe people can make more informed decisions, and can, hopefully through stuff like that, end up on with a better platform fit from the jump. You're on mute.
Am I muted? Am I unmuted
Rookie.
now? There we go.
Rookie.
Well, I had to cough, and so
yeah.
But I thought I hit the button. Unmuted. It just didn't unmute.
No, you unmuted for the coughs. We actually heard you cough.
I heard me cough. Okay, so
I'm sorry.
I guess when I switch,
have some more whiskey.
This is a new setup, man. I mean, I've got certain things that trigger or whatever. So I guess I unmuted for the cough and then muted. Great. It's the first time I've ever streamed. I'm sorry. All right, we're going to jump into the chat. If you have questions, get them in there. LinkedIn is always a mess when it comes to chat, so it's hard to keep up. So if I missed anything, let me know. Ricardo mentions here, are you moving to the EU?
Is that Ricardo Tempesta?
Yes.
The Rick. No, certainly not at this time. I mean, we got plenty of people in Europe already. Also, I live 100 yards, 100 meters-ish from the beach here in scenic Isle of Palms, South Carolina. It's a pretty tough place to leave. I've been home for a year, so I've actually started to really grow fond of the place. I will be visiting for sure as soon as possible. I think people are actually going to expect to see me at the trade shows. And also, I'm a firm believer in in-person interaction and conversations. So I will be back. And I will bring pineapple so Rick and I can eat some delicious pineapple pizza.
Keto, question for Ben. Does the longer hair indicate a return? What are we doing?
You just went live again. Oh man, this is worse than Mage Talk.
This is.
Had to say it.
No. I did a test stream yesterday, and everything worked. Everything worked just perfect yesterday.
Maybe have you crossed the streams? Well, it's okay. It's okay. I mean,
okay. So I can't show the questions on the stream because it just goes crazy. But does the longer hair indicate a return to music?
Return to music. Well, so interestingly enough, I mean, I do have my drum set right here, electronic kit that I bought. Haven't had much time to play it, or honestly, much inspiration to play it. I'd say I was getting a little burned out last year, and that was evident as soon as I moved over to Shopware, and all of a sudden everyone said I look so happy. The hair is all about, I just didn't get a haircut because pandemic. And then it just started growing out. I'm like, wow, it doesn't look as bad as I thought it would. So maybe we'll have one more go at the long hair. Tracy, my wife, is more than excited for that day when I cut my hair again. She likes it. She liked it when it was long when we met, but she really likes it short. So I'm sure it'll be back there. But yes, also music. Hopefully, if I'm not traveling quite so frantically as I was back in the day, I'll have a little more time to play music, which is so important to me.
Awesome. Gabor, I probably mispronounced that, but what's... Do what?
Gabor Imre?
Yes.
I probably mispronounced it too.
What's the most unique features you like in Shopware compared to Magento from the view of a store owner?
Already testing me here. So we have, let me actually see if we have a page on it yet. The flow builder in Shopware. If you're looking this up, set up flow. No, yeah. set up Flow Builder. So there's no, that's not that. Trying to find a good page on this. Well, so fundamentally, what I like is, I always liked how after a little while figuring out and leveling up my own programming ability, the level of flexibility and control that I had as a Magento 1 developer. Now, mind you, by the time Magento 2 came out, I was already working for Magento, so I was no longer building stores anymore. And I did teach, and I did build some stuff in Magento 2, and it was fine. Fine to work with. But my level of comfort and the ease with which I could build things in Magento 1, I feel like I have a good balance of modern development practices and tooling, but also a level of effectiveness to build stuff, easily. So I think that's fundamental. But we do provide business owners. I already mentioned amazing content control, the ability to build good content experiences and pages, and then customize the logic of how your application works in essentially a no code manner, right? So Shopware 6.4 just dropped, and now is a really good time to participate in the Shopware world. If you're interested, you'll get to check that out. Let me see what else.
Philip Jackson in the chat.
Oh boy.
Hey, we're going to try this one more time. I think I fixed the problem. I'm going to try to send it. If it goes to the music again, I apologize. But we're going to try this one more time. Here, look. Look at there. I used to think that Ben's Adobe Comms training was why he gave those long soliloquy answers. Turns out it's just that it's just Ben and his psychology degree.
Yeah. So actually, I catch myself doing it, and I was funny as hell. Actually, I caught up with Philip at before, I think it was ZenCon, so back in Vegas, and we did a little Mage Talk episode. It was after I think Magento had to patch a patch, like the patch of a patch of a patch, and it had been a bit of a moment, and and then I was running into Mark Lavelle and the whole team down in Australia shortly after. But I just remember I see Mark and I'm like, yeah, see, I think I did really well on that. He's like, yeah, I would have said what you said at the end of what you said at the beginning, and then just not said any of the other stuff. So always appreciated that note from Lavelle, and offered with a smile. But it's also Philip, it had gotten better. I had gotten better at it, but now I'm dealing in a much bigger headspace, right? So I'm now having to think, about the whole e-commerce space, and I do a lot of thinking as I'm talking, and that's very dangerous and probably boring as shit for the listeners. But yeah, that's me. So maybe we should do like a chess clock thing where it's like, okay, you get 30 seconds, say what you got to say,
and then it just cuts you off and cuts back to me. I could do that if you want for the next stream.
Let's work on it. It could be fun. Could be a challenge for me.
Matthew, how does the cost of ownership compare between Magento and Shopware?
Good question. The answer is unfortunately variable, right? I wish I would be able to say, oh, it's always better, right? It really depends on what you're trying to do. But in general, actually, Volta den Otter from Support Desk, from a colleague of Magento's Ray Bochman, we have this on if you go to shopware.com, and look up at TCO. There is a blog post on this that actually I'm looking to up. It's actually, I think it's the migration from Magento blog page, not actually intending to call that out specifically, but from Magento 1 to Magento 6, to Shopware 6, not a bad move. But my colleague Walter in the Shopware space has a good take where, and he's Dutch, so their Dutch are never full of it. Very direct. We compared Magento 1 and 2, Shopware, Shopify Plus, and BigCommerce, especially with regard to TCO. Shopware emerges as the clear winner. Shopware is more affordable than like Magento 2 and provides a good option for merchants who currently operate their shop with Magento 1 and want to take the next step. Now, this is from like over like a year ago, so I think we need to look at this again. But also here again is where I want to try and frame TCO, because when you say that something is advantageous in the world of TCO, like I think you also it's important to state the corollary of like how it could be bad, sort of depending on the perspective. So for the reasons that I've said earlier, like if building customizations, I think it's easier. You have less in the way between the foundation of Symfony and the application space, right? So there's not a whole lot of configuration, convention, machinery, all this stuff in between, compared to like a Magento. And that means that I think the level of development, you can get things done more quickly. You can build your customizations, equivalent customizations, more readily in Shopware, and you can support them long term, right? So agencies are looking at lower cost to get things done. So basically, more hours in an inventory, right? Our scope of what we say. And a little birdie just sent me something. So ecommerce.shopware.com/scorecard. We have a platform selection methodology that you can look at. Thank you to my colleague Dennis. But so agencies have more capacity, more inventory, can get more done, right? So that's basically lower development costs overall. And then you look at the maintenance scope. Now, where I think an honest TCO discussion goes, though, like let's say Magento has like all things are equal, but Magento just has like additional core functionality that wouldn't be present in Shopware. And then so you would have to build out, a larger you'd have a bigger custom code footprint in your Shopware instance. Like that, it's just an equation that needs balancing out, right? So all of a sudden that kind of tips things a little bit back towards Magento. That's what I mean about TCO. Like everything about TCO is ambiguous in a matter of perspective. So always evaluate. I think a good agency or an effective merchant is always going to be aware of the core offerings, the tight integrations, and then look at your basically your main risks are what happens when the core is upgraded, what happens, and what's going on with your third-party integrations, and then base a decision on that. If that helps, hopefully that helps.
Hopefully that helps. Ahmad over on LinkedIn, while explaining a point, you focus more on merchants and their customers. Please explain the developers aspect as well.
No, really good thing to call out. I mean, it's interesting because the merchant is like the customer of record. Like so the merchant is the thing. Without the merchants, like this whole party stops, right? So the merchants are essential, but who exactly really is the customer for especially a platform that enables customization and indexes heavily on customization? In some ways it's the agency, right? Because the agency has to take whatever the platform's putting out. Like the platform is worthless to the merchant until it gets in the hands of the agency and the agency's developers, except for when the merchant has their own development team. So our relationship, there are a number of facilities at Shopware that are geared towards developer success. So right off the bat, open source, right? So open source, so you can actually see how things are done. And when you want to build customizations, you can, open source has the advantage of you can kind of get in the mind of how the core is built and then sort of pattern your own implementations off of that. Again, the adjacency, the proximity, especially to Symfony. So a lot of the extensibility, like the event architecture in Shopware is essentially derived straight from Symfony, right? So that means that we have much more overlap with the headspace, the knowledge, the practice of Symfony and its development ecosystem, right? So you can learn a lot about and have a lot of insight into Shopware just from knowing Symfony, or if you don't know it yet, well, you have that as a resource. But then we also have, we've created a series of, we've already started kind of the education, next phase of the education program. So my colleague Herbie and others have been working with people from the Magento ecosystem, like Jitse Reitsma, who just had a baby. So congrats to my two Dutch buddies, Guido and Jitse, on their recent deployments. And I got distracted by babies. But yeah, Jitse has created this entire series of videos that actually help like existing Magento developers map their knowledge to Shopware. But honestly, like having watched a couple hours of videos, I think as an experienced dev, you might not know Magento, but it's plenty of a good introduction into how you do specific things with Shopware. Next up, we're looking at our certification program, and then finally, I think another thing that we do in support of our ecosystem is we have a good integration between with our ticketing system. So essentially, as you see a problem, you can register this, whether it's a feature request or or bug or whatever, on the issue tracker, which is issues.shopware.com. In fact, Miguel Balparda from Nexus, he was walking through an installation and he saw this, and he just submitted something, I think, just like in the last 24 hours. So that close collaboration with the ecosystem is well, it's essential, right? Because again, we have to support what the developers are doing, and if we don't, if we're out of touch with the developers, if we're out of touch with how they get their job done, and the customizations that they need to make and how they make them, then our product becomes, I think, a little less valuable. And then there's also there's docware.io to get for developers to get up and running. So I've been chatting with a large merchant team here in the U.S. over the past couple of weeks, and my follow-up meeting with them yesterday, they called out specifically, like, yeah, we were able to get it up and running, no problem. They came up with a couple little like pointers, around internationalizing the sample data, or demo data as it's called in the Shopware world, and I think we'll be able to address those concerns straight away. So hopefully that's a good, a thorough enough answer. But if not, feel free to ping me directly.
Absolutely. And if you're watching this video, hit the thumbs up button on it for me. Let's get this thing spread out. Let's get these live streams a little more love. See if we can get some more folks on them. All right. So I've only got you booked for the next 5 minutes or so. Do you have a hard stop at the top of the hour, or can we try to get through these questions?
Next thing I have is neighborhood happy hour in 2.5 hours. So
okay, so I've got a hard stop in like 35 minutes. So
okay,
let's try to do a rapid fire round here, though, because if we're gonna go with the long monologue here, we're not gonna get through these.
What do you think? 30 seconds?
Whatever works for each of the questions. Whatever works. I want to get answers for everybody, and I don't even know how many questions we've got here. So. Antonio over on LinkedIn, what is Shopware's biggest potential area for improvement?
Good question. I love these. I'm giving myself 30 seconds. And this could be considered from a couple of different angles. In general, it's all about the global expansion. It's key to our future success. So making sure that we are taking what we do really, really well in certain specific markets right now, and making sure that we're able to do that more broadly.
The alarm.
I don't know how to shut off. Okay, I'll be quick. I'm not sure I'm satisfied with that answer, though. I think there's
okay. Well, go a little longer then.
Well, Right. So it's simple things. I mean, it's just, becoming an English, an English first company, right? That's just an aspect of becoming international, right? Learning how, I mean, you have Shopware's in this really small town in Germany, and stop. And you have, um, so all of a sudden now there are colleagues coming in from all over the world. I mean, I'm the first US hire, but I'm if I'm any good at my job, I won't be the last. Right. So we're, learning to operate on this, like, worldwide scale. Now, Shopware is working with a team in Vietnam. But, but as we start to expand our footprint, of merchants who are using it, more and more merchants in more and more places, more and more agencies in more and more places, we have to be good and, still be us, but be us internationally in front of a lot of different cultures and different climates.
Talal in the chat on LinkedIn, does Shopware provide full services to all its features to build headless front-end apps?
So yes. So, yeah, you can even see now, I mean, 100% coverage is, I think, I don't know if that's the last great myth in programming. But it's certainly more than sufficient. And you can just look at the Vue storefront project for, to get an idea. Just look at the Vue storefront project for Shopware. So you can this works. You can deploy this today, and everything's fully functional. And where it's not, I think it's like where you would, so even if you're building some custom scope of something, it's easy enough to expose endpoints using framework conventions and a little configuration. Next, did we lose TJ?
I'm here. I'm trying to get through. I think there was a great conversation going about all of this in the LinkedIn chat. So if you want to know more about that, you might want to jump over there. I'm just trying to, identify all of the questions to make sure we've found all of them. A lot of great conversation going on here. All right. Not really a question per se, but M2 is a great and stable solution, but it's its own framework. Shopware is for 85 to 90% based upon Symfony.
Yeah. So it's a great point from my colleague Walter. And so you start to say, well, how much is there really there? How much there is there? So it's a good point, but it speaks to, what you're trying to accomplish and how you're trying to accomplish it, right? So, Magento builds in a lot of stuff, but that comes at a cost. I mean, sometimes it's a cost well spent, right? Again, it depends on the evaluation and the fitment between the platform and your requirements. But what I like there is it also brings up in my mind the topic of, okay, what makes the experience, Shopware experience. And for me, that is, that's the stuff that we build around it. That's the ecosystem that we build. So really distilling the earlier question, it's all about, like, how do we have an ecosystem everywhere? It's, always one of Magento's biggest competitive advantages, right? Because you have people who can, synchronously engage in the business, can be ambassadors for your brand, can recruit, can be out there selling to merchants, can be out there creating events, can be out there enticing the key third party integrations to come in, right? So this is all the stuff we have to build up around it. I mean, open source, like, probably the least interesting thing about open source is code. It's all about that philosophy and that mindset, and then making sure that it's enforced and enjoyed and respected throughout the whole community, right? And that community is what, initially what we make it, but eventually it very much takes on a life of its own. So, low complexity framework for custom commerce development, wrapped around in each country by country, more and more coverage with key integrations, payment vendors, shipping, tax calculation, whatever the case may be.
Keep those questions coming. We can go for another 15 or 20 minutes here, as long as there's questions and things to talk about. Joseph in the chat, How ready is Shopware for use in the American and
Uh,
Latam markets?
Mr. Leedy, um, it is so. I mean, there are already stores running Shopware in these markets, but I would like there's some core work to do, right? So there's some of the European perspective leaks through. Um, just leaks through by default. So you might encounter like a VAT field, which just doesn't apply in the US. Um, you know, perfectly easy to just make that go away, but I would like for that to be the norm, like right from the beginning. Um, and this is a challenge that um, all platforms have because um, commerce is so different in so many places, and it can be things as fundamental as like assuming that making every customer account is keyed on an email address. Well, it doesn't really make sense in like Asia, in a lot of countries in Asia, right? Because the consumer, like the transaction, the um, transactional communications and everything else is via maybe an app on your phone or SMS. Um, and like like Magento's opinion from a North American commerce idiom, you take that to the EU, and something as simple and reliable, if you're a US dev building for a US merchant in the US, even the street address line, like, so, you know 601 Carolina Boulevard, right? And then later on down a postcode. But in what's been happening for years in places like, around like Benelux and Germany, it's like the like the street number, maybe plus the postal code becomes this like unique identifier for a location. And so developers have had to, like use regex or string split and sort of extract this so that they can then make, sort of make this atomic or less atomic data. Like, okay, now we have the unique identifier we need, but that's an additional step that honestly would ideally be done by the underlying application. You can talk about this stuff for days. It's fascinating to me. Then you start to think things about like drop off locations, or in some cultures, it's more, in economy, it's more common to um, like you actually can direct a shipping vendor to leave a package with your neighbor, or it's going to go to a locker somewhere. So all of these things have to be accounted for, and it's finding that right balance of like, at which point do you cross over? At which point is this better managed, like inside the shipper's integration? Like, should this be a core concern? So you want to facilitate as much of that as you can in the core, while not trying to be all things to everybody. And it's a fundamental challenge that all platforms have to solve, I think.
So, Lesh, how hard was it to choose between a career in drumming versus returning to e-commerce?
um, well, being a little bit older and a little more pragmatic, I mean, I was never really convinced that I was going to make it. I did teach for a while. I mean, I was a professional drummer before programming and e-commerce came into my life. It was fun. These days, I definitely like the creature comforts. I like that regular paycheck. If things work out, I'm actually going to be on the Dot Digital's Naughty by Nurture podcast. And we'll actually, I think, I'm trying to recruit one of my favorite local musicians to go on with me. So we're gonna kind of talk about, we're gonna find some congruency and stuff between music and commerce. But music, nothing can make me feel like music makes me feel. But that doesn't pay the bills. And also solving the challenges of commerce is interesting as hell. And I also can get goosebumps when I think about, Shopware. If Shopware doesn't do what we're going to do, what I'm going to help us do, then I think more and more commerce opportunities and business is just going to accrete under the SaaS platforms, because it's just kind of a path of least resistance. It's the default path, and it's not a bad path, but it's just, I think it's a little boring. I think open source solutions we're able to innovate, and we're able to we're the ones when we're kind of at the table, we can drive things forward. Like we like to say at Shopware that we're future proof, but the best way to be future proof is to be the ones like helping to invent the future. And I think it's a lot easier to do that more quickly, more readily on an open source solution. So I'm excited about building that out because I look at what happened with, in the Magento space. That was a multi-billion-dollar a year service economy, right? So that's a tremendous value that was brought into existence and that everyone helped reinforce. And so at Shopware, we have we've got sort of this kind of thing happening right now, but I want it to be this kind of thing. And the cool thing is, we might have this much of the pie, right? And there's a couple of ways you make more money. Either the ecosystem stays the same and you just start pushing against the people around you. Maybe you start doing more and more things. Basically, as a platform, you start to eat your own ecosystem, or you try and build it up and you build everyone up and then let them build things up, and then you grow that pie, and your slice of that just represents all of a sudden even more. And I think we have a chance over the next few years to build like $1 billion or more, service economy. And people will create companies. They'll build cool shit, and then as the whole of development, the whole practice of commerce, as all this stuff is evolving, between 3 and 5 years from now, Shopware is going to be in a position as a brand to help dictate the future of how that goes. So the foregone conclusion of everything just becoming SaaS, I think I think we have a lot to say about that story.
Mentions, did the event end on LinkedIn? It did not. It was booked for an hour, so who knows how LinkedIn handles these things? But the stream's still going over there. There's still 30 or so folks. LinkedIn is adding. They're adding a lot of features, especially around content and live streaming, and they haven't got it all figured out yet.
They have gotten better, and I don't envy them the challenge. But boy, their UI was certainly frustrating for many years.
I agree. Karthik, explain something about the tech stack used on Shopware.
Tech stack. Well, I mean, canonical reference, I'm sure, is on the website, but so PHP, of course, Elasticsearch as the search tech, and then your backend storage is MySQL or one of its analogs like MariaDB or Percona. I know I'm aware of people using MariaDB, but and then Symfony as the basis for the PHP approach to how things are built, and then some conventions and architecture laid atop that. That's the quick and dirty of it. And and again, if you're getting started, just check out dockware.io. DOCKWARE.io. It's an open source project, but it basically that can get you up and running. And then once you're familiar with the application, you can then start to dig into the different layers.
All right, we've got a couple of more questions here we're going to get into, and then we're going to call it a day. Now, a couple of these are related, so I'm gonna throw them up there and rephrase the question here. But Talesh says, I'm assuming we'll see you at least at IRCE and big e-commerce conferences. And he was wondering if he can expect you back at Cafe Hop. Who knows I don't know how to pronounce that. But travel. Like, obviously with Magento, your job was mostly travel. So what does that look like? What is your travel schedule expected to be?
Well, the travel wasn't the job. I just, my job was just, hanging out with everybody, and I had to travel to do it. So, I'm excited. I really enjoyed the year off. It was over a year between flights, and that was fantastic. And I'm vaccinated. Got the Johnson & Johnson 1 and done, along with my wife a few weeks ago. So we're kind of ready to go. And as things open up, so I know Webwinkelbachtage in the Netherlands is looking at having an in-person event in some form or fashion in the not too distant future, like somewhere between May and who knows the summer. Would really like to be there. Be great to meet the latest Dutchies. Um, but I will be. I actually I'm certainly planning on less travel than before. There's less travel opportunities, I think, for me than because there's not quite the big, worldwide community in the shopware world yet, as of yet. But I think you will see me out more than I was expecting, right? Because I think at least for right now, the imperative for me to be in person, having these conversations like I always had, and then being able to act on them. That's the difference. I gained a lot of information, a lot of insight, and now I'm in much more of a position to actually build and do things with that knowledge. So soon enough.
Jinyesh in LinkedIn will Shopware support 2.5 million SKUs on the platform?
Mm-hmm.
Just a yes.
Yeah, no. So I think, yeah. I mean, if I were any good at my job, I probably would have some of these, bullet lists. But I think, yeah, 2.5 million is one of the larger catalog sizes. But there again, like anyone, that was a question, right, or the point?
Yeah, I mean, the question was, will it handle it?
Yeah, I mean, I believe there are. I want to say actually it's literally like 2.5 million SKUs or something. I mean, we have merchant, I think at least one merchant doing over 1 billion GMV or something. I might be wrong. Hopefully one of my colleagues will correct me in Slack, but I mean, and those are always interesting, and it's good to have those references, for agencies and for merchants to know, like, okay, someone else is doing this, right? Because no one wants to go alone. And just like that, Walter says, yep. So there's a shop with over 3.5 million products. So yes, but again, like that's an interesting thing. It's a maybe, I don't know if that's a door opener. It's at least a door knocker, but um, you know, there are always, it's like, how is this being used? Like, if I'll use the Magento example because it's what I know. Like, you start building, you can run into problems as you start, creating variants of product, and you start, um, and the system all of a sudden is, might be optimized for, like a matrix of like a configurable product with a matrix that gives you like, 9 or 16 products or something, underlying the facade product. Shopware takes a different approach to modeling that same thing. So it's like, how is this um, which other aspects of the site affect our factors in the indexing and things like that. So yes, it can handle it, but you definitely want to investigate that use case. I mean, anytime you're getting into these large data sets, you really, I don't care if it already has been done on the platform. You have to be cognizant of how your particular approach is going to be done. And that's the cool thing. What agencies are great at doing, though, they can say, like, a merchant can come in and say, well, I've got 2 million SKUs, and la da 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 da, and this is how I want to do things. And a good agency will know, hopefully, more than one platform well enough to say not only which one is probably going to be best, but also might be able to say, well, actually, if you change your approach this way, you're going to make it a lot easier. You're maybe going to reduce TCO or whatever. So yeah, there's some phenomenal capacity for what Shopware can do. I mean, and I think that has a lot to do with its um, the relative simplicity of its extensible architecture.
What are community management things that you want to do differently at Shopware than what was done at Magento?
Oh, trying to get me in trouble. And I literally almost answered that with a little steam coming out of my collar. And just about myself, like I should have advocated. I mean, if probably my biggest failure at Magento was not making the job I was doing, like getting it like a director level staffing, whether that was me or someone else. I mean, probably, especially the first few years, it would have much more ideally been someone else with experience. Um, I just making sure that community um, is top of mind, and every interaction I've had with the Shopware crew. I mean, they're very close to that ecosystem out there, but making sure that that stays that one time. Like when you have community in Indonesia, when you have community in, in New Zealand, like all 8 of them, um, it's fun. But I mean, ecosystem has to be a first class citizen, because all feedback comes from them. If you're starting to make bad decisions, if you're starting to not miss an opportunity, like the ecosystem, if you have a good relationship with them, they will hold you accountable. They will um, and they'll kind of keep the spice flowing. I mean, it's great because everyone in the ecosystem reinforces each other. Another thing that I want to make sure happens is that we are helping to create the heroes and heroines of our ecosystem. I'm sorry, not create, but helping to promote them and help them along in their careers, right? So as people come into the Shopware world, or there already are some pretty amazing community members who are already contributing a lot. And by contribution, I mean, um, this is something Sherry is very big on at Magento. Contribution is not just code. It's are you having talks? Are you participating in the business? It's really any kind of outward expression of interest, question, or contribution, or messaging around your product. And trying to understand and keep an eye on all of what's happening there, and make sure that we're promoting those people. But then the challenge, of course, is like, as you start to recognize people visibly as a company, like, oh, look at this person, they're a great champion or a great ambassador for the brand, then some people start to be motivated just to become that thing. And this has happened time again. It happened at Magento. It happened at other ecosystems before Magento. Um, so managing that, reasonably and in real time, and making sure that we're always keeping a good culture of engagement for the benefit of the ecosystem, as opposed to engagement necessarily for the benefit of oneself.
Tarn Deep says,
Hey,
"What
Tarn
is
Deep.
the unique thing of Shopware you are excited about?"
Oh man, good question. Well, this could be a feature, right? Or it could be so much. But I there again, the thing that gets me really excited, the thing that keeps me, like, that just has my brain buzzing almost nonstop, um, is the opportunity to build, like, to help create um, the worldwide ecosystem of Shopware. Again, I think the thing that always was so humbling to me, with in looking at my Magento days, was like watching people who were like, I remember when you first came into IRC and you didn't know anything, and now you have a big agency like a few years later. Or people who were at an agency and then they go and they start a company. I mean, watching people build businesses, watching people innovate, watching people do things that, like, no one at the OEM, whether that was Magento or Shopware, like at the company making the software, like, we had no idea you could even do that. Right? So I mean, even at Magento, we had a product manager, Chuck Chikalis, super great dude. And he would run, like, he was running Magento 2 on like a Raspberry Pi cluster. I just, so probably not materially impactful in terms of the business, but like that kind of culture of just just joyous creation and innovation, and but at the same time making amazing business, and setting a standard. So I think that's actually what where I'm getting really high. The bigger we make Shopware, and like the bigger we, the more power we have to go to some of the other platforms to say, hey, the way you're doing business, I think you could do it better. And and keeping that door open for them, say like, hey, we saw you doing this or not doing this, and have you considered that? Like, collaborate. Again, the better that each platform does, the net, like the whole of e-commerce benefits. And and then individually, the businesses participating in the space benefit, the merchants benefit, the customers benefit. The opposite of that is where everyone's just spending all their time slinging mud and introducing a bunch of negativity in the world that just, I think, it's a wasted opportunity when we could have done something positive and just have all of the energy and all the efforts go into the good stuff. And it's a fun little battle, right? Going back and forth, like, okay, we got this little feature here, and then they come out and they leapfrog you over here with this platform. But that's the nature of the business, and that's how we just grow this thing more and more.
All right, final question right here. How's Shopware support for B2B merchants?
So I can't. Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking like support. Like what happens if I have to call support? So we have an entire like B2B suite. So the features and functionality are there. I can't rattle them off my top of my head, but your best resource is online. But I also should say, like, I did have a meeting with Moritz, our the support guru, and I'm really impressed. Like the NPS with Shopware's support is good, and this is critical. Like support success is it pretty much up there at the top, like top 1, 2, 3 things that has to be maintained. Like our excellent support. We will make sure that remains the case. And I have some really interesting ideas about how to remove the not really friction, but there's nothing worse, I think, than when there's a problem. There's a problem on a merchant site. It's poor performance. It's down. There's a bug or something, and the merchant goes, needs support, and then all they see are like 3 different vendors or 4 different vendors, category of vendors, like pointing fingers at each other. No, it's over here on hosting. No, you guys did the deployment. It busted things out. Well, this is actually probably coming from the core. Oh no, it's this integrator over here. They're blocking things. The support experience should always be first person plural. We are on it. We are handling it. Like that's what I'm looking forward to. It's not easy. No one calls support because they're having a great day, but it's how you resolve that, and then how you learn from it, and then how you add that to however you scale support over time. But making sure that support in general. Sorry for hijacking your question, but I think this is really important as well. Making sure that the merchant understands that, at least if you're in the Shopware world, everyone is a team. Everyone's your team, and no one's pointing fingers at each other. I mean, we might have a phone call on the side outside of the ticket, say, hey, get your shit together. But we're all working together in a common interest to make sure that the merchant can deliver what they need to deliver for their customer. Like, full stop.
All right, if you would, tell everybody how they can get in touch with you if they need to know more.
Well, you can find me waxing rhapsodic about e-commerce online. I'm on the Twitters, just Ben Marks, BenMarks. You can find me at my email. Is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Unless you want to go through social media. So however to contact me, or LinkedIn messaging. Now I've fully had to jump heads in finally after years into LinkedIn. So LinkedIn messaging, I may not get to you quite as quickly, but b.marks, so b.marks @shopware.com. Maybe one day I'll convince them to give me just the ben@shopware.com handle if it's possible. I don't know. I think that's not the standard, and it's a very German company. So yeah, but however, if you have any questions, or if you see anyone else from Shopware, they're all pretty friendly. So if you know anyone, just reach out. But I'll be hopefully you'll feel me in your market soon enough, and so hopefully I'll reach you before you reach me. But in lieu of that, please reach out if there's whatever the question is, whatever the opportunity is. I'll either answer it or get you to the person who can help you answer it.
All right. If they're that friendly, they're going to give you ben@shopware.com. I'm going to be extremely disappointed if I don't see ben@shopware.com at least by this time next week. So I don't know. I'm not going to think very highly of them if they won't give you the email address. But I appreciate you coming on, Ben. If you'll hold on for just a second after I'm sure this stream is done, you and I can recap and chat for just a second, but I appreciate everybody out there watching and participating. Thank you for your questions. We're going to try to fire these streams up a little more regularly here pretty soon. Got some really interesting things going on with the YouTube channel here as well that you'll see. Hopefully those will be rolling out here soon as well. So everybody have a nice weekend, and we'll catch up with you later.